Brett Kavanaugh's position in the DC Circuit Court needs to be filled, and Trump has nominated a woman by the name of Naomi Rao to fill that position. Now, she is currently undergoing Senate hearings. The Senate needs to confirm her, and we're learning quite a bit about her. In college and a little after college, she had written a number of columns that we had talked about on the show, where she questioned whether a woman's sobriety plays a role in her getting raped if she has been a victim of rape. But now there are more stories coming out. Recently, one published in The Intercept that talks about how she has used her position within the government to essentially stall incredibly important guidance pertaining to sexual harassment in the workplace. Let me give you the details. The Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs, which is managed by Naomi Rao, has been stalling a critical employer guidance on workplace sexual harassment for over a year. So in November of 2017, shortly after the Harvey Weinstein story really blew up, the government got involved. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission delivered the new harassment guidelines to her government agency, the OIRA. But it has fallen into a black hole under her leadership. So there hasn't really been any effort to respond to it, to comment on it, to maybe change it to something better. It's just completely stalled. And when you consider what she had written in the past about sexual harassment, about sexual assault, it does not draw a great picture of who she is and how seriously she takes these issues.
Yeah, so as usual, The Intercept doing a great job of reporting here, because they explain that this has been held up by her for about 15 months. And my immediate question was, okay, but how long does it take normally to get this kind of guidance circulated through that department? And it turns out the answer is 90 days.
Yep.
And so if it's normally 3 months and this is taking 15 months, well, then you get a fuller context for how much they have held this back. And then they went on to report other facts about it, including why it might be held up. There's two different factors here. One is this office is being used to block a lot of regulations. They don't want regulations, so they just send it into a bureaucracy. And Naomi Rao apparently is being called the deregulation queen by some. Of course, for conservatives, that's such a huge stamp of approval, and that's why she is now getting what could be perceived as a promotion to this incredibly important court, even though she's never been a judge. And they're like, oh, you're willing to do whatever corporations want to kill regulations that might help the American people? That's it, you're our person. Let's get you on the court and move you on up. She's in fact now reported as being on the shortlist for the next Supreme Court nomination for a Republican.
She's never been a judge.
Never even been a judge.
She's part of the Federalist Society. The Federalist Society has been fighting to get these anti-regulation conservatives onto the Supreme Court. And that's all that really matters. As long as she is active with that organization, conservative politicians will definitely nominate her at some point.
Yeah, this is the natural progression of the conservative philosophy. She does not want government to work. She's been clear about that in her writings at Yale and throughout history. They want government to be deregulated, deconstructed, so that there are not these safeguards in place and standards so that they can protect women in the workplace, so that there can be the variety of these other protections. It's the natural result of their extremist philosophy. And something that also stuck out to me too from this piece was that some of her writings indicated that she wants to give the president a lot of leeway, kind of like the unitary executive theory, where the president can do whatever he wants, and that's what she believes is the true version of the Constitution.
Right, meaning she doesn't believe in the Constitution.
Exactly,
that's not what the
but that's what
Constitution
blows
says.
my mind is these conservatives say that they're strict constructionists, that they believe in the founding fathers and their originalist philosophy. The founding fathers were incredibly speculative and afraid of a president being ultra powerful. It is the exact opposite of what she's saying. So conservatives in this day and age are not strict constructionists, they're authoritarians. And
Absolutely.
She is a person who is manifesting that philosophy, and that's who they want to fill Brett Kavanaugh's seat. I mean, with her writings about sexual assault, you have to think that Republicans would be even an iota smarter about who they're going to nominate. They had to do 1 ounce of research and then they would have figured this out.
Let's break down a little bit more why the conservatives like her so much and why she's useful. But in doing that, I want to go back to the second point I wanted to make about the office that she held under Donald Trump. So they hold up regulations on workplace protection, partly because they don't want any regulations to hinder business in any way. My God, if you had a person who was discriminating at work, but it cost the company a nickel, well, who cares about the discrimination?
Yeah.
We want to protect corporations at all costs. But the second component of it was the new regulations in this case also included guidance on sexual orientation and gender identity being protected. And they don't want to protect those things.
Right.
And so that's why they held this one up. And Jeff Sessions prohibited transgender people protections in workplace discrimination under Title VII when he was the head of the Justice Department. So this goes along with the Trump administration theme of no, we do not give the same equal rights to gay Americans or trans Americans as we give to straight Americans. So by the way, if you're continue to be surprised that the Republicans actively, legally discriminate against LGBT community in this country, you're not paying any attention at all, and you're
getting funded by the Koch brothers,
or you're getting funded by the Koch brothers, or you're being greedy and you think, hey, you know what? I want my tax cuts, and look, I'm already rich. I don't have to worry. They're going to discriminate against other gay people, and I don't really care about them, etc. But the Republicans will discriminate against gay people. They do it every time. Every time they're elected, they do it. So don't come around and pretend to be surprised about it, okay?
Yeah, and so look, there's one other part of this that I wanted to bring up because it's so incredibly short-sighted, even for politicians who don't really care about the American worker, but care much more about corporations. This whole guidance, first of all, it's non-binding, right? This is guidance to essentially help out companies as they navigate through these very complex issues, because accusations of sexual assault, sexual harassment, they can be difficult to investigate, to decipher, all of that. And so the whole point here was to make it so the employer is not liable for inaction. It's like, hey, let's help you out. Okay, if an employee comes to you with accusations of sexual harassment or sexual assault, here is some guidance. Here's what you can do so you don't end up being liable. So it's hilarious because this was an effort to not only protect employees from terrible actions, but also guidance to help employers when they don't know what to do when these types of accusations come forward. But they're so obsessed with carrying out their hatred towards certain groups of people, including transgender individuals, that they, will stall this type of guidance and they'll, go against the best interests of everyone in the country, both, corporate leaders and employees.
So now I want to go back to, is it fair to judge what she wrote in college? Well, and they say that she was being intentionally provocative back then. So I can relate to this. I was intentionally provocative and I was conservative back in college, law school, etc. And I wrote things that I regret. The question though is, wait, do you regret it? Have you changed your mind? So I have a long track record and history of being progressive for a long time, right? She doesn't have to be progressive, but is she uncomfortable with those things that she wrote? And her track record indicates she's not at all uncomfortable with it. So she wrote here on, she said homosexuals want to redefine marriage and parenthood. Now look, she wrote that back in the 1990s. If she's evolved on that, a lot of Democratic politicians have evolved on that. So okay, that'd be fair and I wouldn't hold it against her. But she's holding up things that would give equal rights to the homosexual community, the LGBT community in America.
Yes.
So it appears she hasn't evolved at all. So just own it, just own it. Who are you? And that's why conservatives like you. Why are we pretending that they like you, what, because you're moderate? No, they like you because you don't believe in LGBT rights. They don't look at the stuff you wrote at Yale as the problem, they view it as the solution. So, and by the way, why are we having a conversation about Naomi Rao when she hasn't been a judge? This doesn't make much sense in that context. Here's why we're having a conversation about her. Because when she was at Yale, she raised her hand and said, I will fight against women, I'm a woman. I will fight against minorities, I'm a minority. And when Republicans see that, they froth at the mouth. They're like, yes! This is a perfect tool for us.
Yep.
And so to give you a sense of how much more she said against women, feminists in women's studies programs want to replace the so-called male rationality with more sensitive responses common to women, she wrote with a Y. It may be kinder and gentler, but can you build a bridge with it? Like women, right? You want to be kind and gentle to them, but can you build a bridge with it? Come on, what good are they for?
I mean, maybe she's making a great point. Maybe since she's a woman, she can't be trusted to serve on the DC Circuit Court.
Well, speaking of women, what will Joni Ernst do, right? So with this news that has come out about her, will she stand up? She voted for Kavanaugh. Look, I have a lot of empathy for what she went through, and I got choked up watching that video of her describing what happened to her and responding to it too. That information was leaked without her consent. I feel terribly for her. But will she stand up for women? Will she ask this nominee hard questions and vote with her experience?
She will not stand up.
Tim Scott already said he's not going to vote for her, so, right.
Good, awesome.
One Republican.
Just real quick, the Ernst story that we prepared, but we hadn't covered it because we ran out of time. She had alleged that she was a victim of sexual misconduct when she was a student. And then she's going through a divorce with her husband. I don't want to get into the details of her personal life, right? And I do feel terrible for what she went through. But that story enraged me for a number of different reasons, including her continuous support of Donald Trump and her support of Brett Kavanaugh, even as Christine Blasey Ford was, in that hearing, sharing very specific details about what she went through. And she continues to support Trump after he made Christine Blasey Ford a laughingstock during one of his rallies. So, you touched a raw nerve with me by bringing her up.
I meant to bring it up because the hypocrisy is so glaring. I feel terribly for her, but you have to, it's not just your words, it's your actions as a lawmaker when you have power like that.
Well, let me go to Rao's direct quote because we gave it to you yesterday, but I want to make sure you hear it. She wrote back then, when a woman, quote, drinks to the point where she can no longer choose, well, getting to that point was part of her choice. So if that doesn't blame the victim, it comes awfully close and is an outrageous thing to say, obviously. She said feminist scholarship, which attempts to fabricate a rich history of female work where none exists.
Okay, so does that mean that anything that you've done in your career is worthless because you're simply a woman? Anyone who applauds your hard work should know that that hard work does not exist. Look, for people who have these strong feelings about feminists, particularly women who have those feelings, I hope they understand that not too long ago, Rao would not have the ability to even comment about politics and have her opinions taken seriously, right? And so I get it. There are people who, for one reason or the other, believe Rush Limbaugh's narrative of what a feminist is, even though there are variations of feminism, lots of variations. There's a lot of disagreement among feminists about what is and is not female empowerment. But regardless of what you think about those debates, understand that feminism led to the opportunities that Rao gets to take advantage of today.
But she is selected to defeat those opportunities. They could pick any woman. There's 330 million people in the country. They have a lot of different choices. It's not an accident that they're picking Rao. They're picking Rao because she says women have contributed nothing and it's a fabrication that they have a rich history of work. You know what the fabrication is, ironically? Your record. Because your record is predicated on the fact that you will attack women and you will attack people of color and you will attack gay people. That's why you stood out in the first place. That's why you, by the way, she clerked for Clarence Thomas, was also picked for a similar reason. And so Tim Scott, the only black Republican, Emma mentioned him in the Senate. He voted against a couple of Republicans that were nominated because they have honestly a racist past. And he said, Republicans, quote, should stop bringing candidates with questionable track records on race before the full Senate for a vote. Senator Scott, why do you think they're doing that? You think it's an accident? Oh, golly gee, we just nominated another guy who has a questionable record on race, and another guy, and another guy. Or maybe you're in the wrong party. And so they don't pick these people because they have a problem of saying outrageous things against minorities, women, etc. in the past. They pick them because of that. And if you're a person of color and you're a woman and you attack your own, that is their dream candidate. And they view that as your main qualification. So let's keep it real on why she's been nominated in the first place. And if you think that's a real qualification, there's something wrong with you. Obviously they should not vote in favor of her. And last thing on this, being nominated for these positions, it's a job interview, okay? The Senate gets to decide whether you get to move forward or not. And there is this feeling in Washington, not just by the establishment politicians, but of the press, that it is her position already, that it's her privilege. No, you don't have that privilege. You're interviewing for a job, and there is hundreds of millions of people we can choose from, and many that are way more qualified to be a judge than you are. So sorry, we don't agree that it is your position to lose. No, it is your position to gain if you could pass that job interview, and there's excellent reasons why you shouldn't. So in that story that we just did about Naomi Rao, I attributed a quote to her as it was direct, but it's not a direct quote. She was actually praising the work of an author who said, feminist scholarship which attempts to fabricate a rich history of female work where none exists. So she did not write those words, but she praised those words from another author, okay? Not much of a difference, but I wanted to be clear. The TYT Plus app is now available on iOS and Android. Download to get more TYT content at tyt.com/app.